Here's why we're here. We're talking about reconnecting to workplace purpose. And my expertise is in human happiness. We'll spend some time talking about human happiness today. And the second part of this, though, purpose is a part of happiness, but work should add to your happiness. Work should add to your relationships. Work should add to your meaning in life, your mattering in this world, and also to your purpose. For most of you on here that I can tell are public sector employees. So far, it looks like, and that usually public sector employees have some connection to meaning and purpose in the work they do. Probation professionals, law enforcement professionals, but even those of you working inside of a community and serving in some public capacity about either improving the health of the community or the safety of the community or how people get to engage with their community in meaningful ways. So that that's pretty evident. And today we're going to make it like, how can you explore that a little bit more? How can you add a little more purpose easily in your life? It's not about changing things completely overnight, unless you need to make that change. But it's about what are the tweaks you can make? What can you learn about yourself to improve on? All right, let me tell you a little bit about me, because I'm my favorite subject. That's me. Then my company is called Focus on the 40. We will talk about why my company is called Focus on the 40 this morning. And I'm a bit of a goofball, and I love to tell everybody that I look like Brad Pitt from a distance. This is definitely not the distance. Okay. And someone said, I don't see Brad Pitt. I see some Jim Carrey. And I was like, oh, Jim Carrey. Living Color. He was on that sketch comedy show, if you remember that from the 90s. And then he's a stand-up comedian first, and then he's been in every significant movie in his life. Is the blockbuster after blockbuster. I was like, all right, I like that. I could do a little Jim Carrey. All right. So I went around looking for an image, and I was like, all right, give me a favorable look at Jim Carrey. I was like, all right, I could try to pull that look off. I got to do the black and white. I got to get a lot more fluff in my hair. Let's see. No. At this point, you can use the chat for LOLs or have some little emoji fun with me. But so I don't really look like Jim Carrey either, but I would love to have his career. He's turned out to be somebody really interesting to me to kind of follow his path a little bit. And the person I showed this image to, they were like, well, yeah, I said you remind me of Jim Carrey, but that's not the Jim Carrey I mean. Like, I meant more like, this version of Jim Carrey. It's like, all right, fine. I do like silly costumes. I have a lot of fun in my local community, doing activities and events and special events. I'll share that with you in a moment. So, part of my business for Focus on the 40 is speaking, is professional speaking. So if you have conferences or associations or trade shows that you're part of, let me know. I love speaking at those. I spoke at a bunch of different conferences this year. A couple big ones around law enforcement, probation, and parole. This image is, I was in Taiwan this year. I was presented at a conference in Taipei, which is really awesome to get to go to Taiwan. I had some people that I met through some work I did in the Philippines the previous year, and had a chance to hang out with locals in Taiwan, which is really cool. The food is crazy, crazy good and crazy diverse out there. It's really fun. So, speaking on stages is something I love to do. And then, I am a motivational speaker, but not like, Matt Foley from Saturday Night Live. I don't live in a van down by a river, but for a while I did live in an RV down by a creek, but that's because I was emceeing all summer long at a concert venue in Colorado. I don't do that anymore. Well, I do the motivational speaking, not the living in RVs. And the other half of my business is actually working with intact teams. And so I do a lot of work inside of workplaces. In fact, Kelly, this image on the right is from Oregon Public Transit Conference. And then it's a game and an activity we play around resilience. It's about cognitive agility. And the one on the left is a fun one. I call that one conflict polls or trust or helium polls, because it gets people arguing with this silly little activity we do where they have to take a poll simply and move it from up here to down to the floor. And it's surprisingly harder than you think based on the activity. That one's about building trust. It's about engaging in conflict, recognizing that conflict actually has value if done correctly. So I love this really nice mix of things I get to do. And I just told you I got to do some fun stuff this weekend. I was, in the past, I've been the MC for a float in the Christmas parade we have here, the holiday parade we have here in Bend, Oregon, where I live. And this year I got upgraded. I got asked to co-MC for the first time, the overall Christmas parade, where we watched 97 different floats go by. The image on the left is from being on the float one year. I had this vast array of terrible suits. And the image on the right is me and one of the anchors from Central Oregon Daily Hour, one of our news stations, kind of standing on our platform, looking at all the different folks coming through. I had a little bit of fun. I told people that we were doing a snow dance this year. And the short version of this is the Pray for Snow dance that we were doing essentially turned out to be YMCA. And then we played the song. And then I also told them that we were going to do a warm-up activity, which turned out to be the chicken dance. So I'm having some fun with the audience. We'll see if I can invite it back next year. So that was this past weekend for me, and I have a couple comedy shows coming up and an improv show coming up. But I get to chill out for a few weeks. I'll be working remotely at home, but I'm excited for that. And I had a really nice Thanksgiving with friends and family, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you on something that you did for Thanksgiving, or maybe something you're doing for Christmas if you celebrate that. If you celebrate the holidays at all, some people don't really. But I would love to know something from you. What's a unique meal that you make for the holidays? What's a cool, fun activity that you do? My sister has an advent calendar, if you know what those are. Or what's some act of generosity that you'll be doing? And I'll tell you one of my favorite things. My meal, while you're hopefully typing for me, is I make this thing called corn souffle. It's essentially a casserole dish. It's kind of like a cornbread, but it's a lot thicker and it has a lot more dairy in it. It's really nice and dense, kind of moist meal. And one of the activities we do, my girlfriend and I have done now, I think just 2 years in a row, but we live in a national forest or by a national forest. And so you can chop down a tree for $5. And so she got this really lovely little, I don't know if it was a spruce, that we brought into her house and decorated together. It was fun. We go tromping off in the woods first with the dog. Yeah. And then act of generosity, I volunteered for I Like Pie, which is a fundraiser on Thanksgiving. My sisters, I've been making some gifts to nonprofits. I've had a good year financially, and I like to give back this time of year. So what about you? Hop in the chat. Tell me something about you. Anthony feels alone right now because nobody's in the chat. There we go. Good. When I feel lonely by myself, I sing, and you don't want that, right? Kelly says, since I don't have any little ones anymore, I like to buy gifts. Oh, for homeless kids. Oh, Kelly, that's wonderful. Kelly, I'm going to tell you a story later about recognition and how that's so important. How it connects to purpose inside of work. That's really beautiful. Thank you for doing that, Kelly. Wendy says, preparing a tea ring pastry Christmas morning. Oh, that's really nice. That's great. Vanessa. Oh, Vanessa, Sonoma County probation. I remember. Yes, thank you. Cool. My brain is working a little slow. I'm going to have some coffee. She says, our work sponsors a couple of giving trees, Secret Santa gifts. Remember. Oh, that's wonderful, Vanessa. Thank you. And Christina says, go looking at Christmas tree lights in the area, occasionally pay for a person behind me in the drive-thru at Starbucks. Yeah. If you, I encourage you to Google something. It's a show called I Wish You Would Leave. And I think if you Google that and drive through, there's a really funny skit around that from this guy. I can't think of his name, but he does this skit where he does the pay it forward thing in the drive-through line at a fast food place. He's like, I'm going to pick up the tab for the guy behind me. And they're like, oh, that's super nice. And then he knows the guy behind him is going to order and he's going to pay for his, but he places his order and then he drives around and tries to sneak in behind the guy that's doing the pay it forward so he can order again and order a bunch of food. And he's like, I want 55 fries, 55 burgers, 55. It's a ridiculous skit. It's really worth watching. It's a funny little thing. So that's great. I'm glad you all have, traditions are really important for the human brain. Our brain likes those things, right? And our brain is wired for service. And so it's really nice for us to do this, these acts of service this time of year. What if we were to do these things throughout the year, and these little acts really do add up. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about habits a little bit today too. All right, great. Let's talk about where we're going today. We're going to talk about purpose, and we'll do a little purpose check-in a couple of different ways. And you're going to do some activities on this too, so be ready for that. And then, well, apparently these are out of order. Sorry about that. But happiness is Greek. We'll talk about the human happiness model very briefly with a focus on purpose and a little bit on relationships because relationships are so important. We're going to talk about service drivers, and then we'll talk about your gifts. All of these activities come out of one of my books. We'll use something today that talks about ikigai, which is a purpose-related term from the Japanese language. And these all come from my book. If you notice, my book is pink. It has a Pepto-Bismol bottle on there, right? Because, sorry, I was hanging out with my family and my little baby nephew. He's not quite 2 years old, but he's going to daycare, so he's a giant germ factory. So I'm fighting something off. But the work can make our lives hard sometimes. It doesn't have to be that way. It's a lot of the work that we do with teams is try to get them to work with more cohesion, to have better relationships, to be more aligned in your work, feel really good about the work you do, find alignment in your job. We'll talk about that today. And but sometimes work makes us upset. So Pepto-Bismol, that's there to make us feel better as well. And the idea behind this book is that it's also actionable. So there's different parts of the book that you can dive into to kind of ease these pains and these discomforts that come from this work that we can do that can be hard. I get that, right? And we dive into each part. And what's really cool about the book is it's built to have activities in it. And so there's 14 activities in the book, survey tools and instruments, PDFs that you get for free by buying the book. And we're going to play with one of those today about purpose. And I told you, the book is about the pink stuff, right? We call it for Pepto-Bismol. And I'm an entrepreneur, so I pitched my work to Pepto-Bismol to see if they would fund my presentations, my talks, and my books and all that. They haven't gotten back to me. But I'm an entrepreneur, so I kept reaching out. And I thought, well, what do we know in the world is going to make our stomachs upset? And how do we get in front of that? How do we be proactive about it? And so I reached out to the Pepsi company, who owns Taco Bell, to pitch the new Peptalupa. It's the Peptalupa cream sauce, because you know what's going to happen. You're going to eat that Taco Bell, and 15 minutes later, you're going to be like, I have made a huge mistake, right? So hopefully the Peptalupa cream sauce will ease that. They have not gotten back to me. Thank you. I saw the LOLs coming through and little laughter faces. I appreciate those. So that's my little joke for the day. There'll be more. Sorry, they're going to keep coming. But the toolbox has a lot of these activities that you can get the book on Amazon. That's the end of my sales pitch around that. The thing I want you to get out of today's program too is I want you to gain some fluency. Okay. When we talk about fluency, we talk about language. We talk about speaking another language, but the language today is on purpose. The language today is on happiness. And so I want you to have just a little bit of language to understand these moments in life where you can be like, oh, that's that thing that Brad Pitt looking guy was talking about. And then, what's the new habit? And what we know about the human brain is that the human brain loves choice. Okay. So I want you to find something today too, also that you're like, oh, that's something actually I would like to work on. Okay. See how I said that with like positivity and like light energy? That's good. You want that, right? That's easier for the human brain. And just like these books from our childhood, they were books where you could choose your own adventure. The same book you could tell multiple stories with based on the way that the book was laid out. And I want you to think about that for yourself today. And I also want you to think about that happiness is not a state of being in my mind. Purpose is not a state of being. They are active crafts. They require energy. They require effort. They require intention. You can kind of get the ball rolling and have momentum from those things, but they require some action on your part, right? Crafting your life is a verb. Making choices in your life is a verb. Making actions in your life is a verb, okay? And let's talk about the significance about this from the science of positive psychology. If I were to tell you that if we had a full glass in front of us, let's see if I can get this on the Zoom screen. I've got these cool little glasses from here and Ben. There's the glass, okay? If it's this full glass has three components to it. One of those components is genetics. How much do you think your genetics influence your happiness? Your answer should be no higher than 100%, no lower than 0. What do you think? Between 0 and 100. I'll even take a sip of water. Don't leave me stranded by myself. There we go. Vanessa says 30. Great. Thank you, Chief. When he says 20, can I repeat? Sure, Christina. If the glass in your life is 100% happiness, right? This is a full life, living your life fully glass. Sorry, the image isn't showing up very well. But if there's 3 components to the glass that contribute to your overall happiness, one of those is genetics. Genetics does have some influence on your happiness. That's what your parents give you, right? And how much do you think genetics influences your happiness overall? from 0% to 100%. Kelly says 60%. Okay, Kathy says 20. Hi, Kathy. We met at OPTC too. Christina says 60. Great. Okay. All right. Correct answer is 50%. Okay. Now, when we talk about genetics, that's nature, nurture. That's nature, right? There's a nurture component, and there's this really important process called neuroplasticity, where we can wire and rewire our brain through different thoughts, different actions that we take, where this brain is constantly reshaping patterns, but based on our actions, the emotions attached to those actions and new habits. Okay. Now, when we talk about genetics, genetics affects our temperament, like how much, how do we approach life, right? It affects our mood, the baselines of these things. Okay. And then also our reactivity. And if you come from a reactive family, maybe like this family from the show Seinfeld, they were always reacting and yelling about the most mundane of things. Some of that is also nurtured too, right? But genetics does have an influence early in our happiness, and then we can choose to rewire that because our brains are malleable. Our brains are always changing and making new patterns. Okay. Now, second part of this is really interesting to me, is that 50% of our happiness comes from our genetics. Okay. Now, these are all rule of thumb, by the way. Sometimes genetics don't play as much influence. This is where you have to explore your life. You have to explore your own happiness, figure out where you are, figure out what's in front of you. Okay. Now, we talk about circumstances. We're talking about like things like demographics. Okay. And demographics, how old you are, religion, amount of religion in your life, or they call that religiosity. Are you married? Are you educated? How much money do you make? Where do you live in the world? Right. All of those are sort of demographic data. What's really interesting is that we put a lot of influence on those on our lives, and they don't have as much influence as we think. Okay. Genetics, 50%, circumstance, 10%. And to give you some more influence or more information on this, it's about the context of your life. This can change based on the context of your life, the amount of connection you have in your life, capacity that you have to change, right? So some of these circumstances about, can we make more money? Do we have the ability to change our career? Can we change our community? Can we change our relationships? Some of those require power. Some of those require agency. And some people have more of that and some people don't. I can tell you one of the things that makes me that I'm very aware of in my life is the amount of agency I have, the amount of choice I have over what I do with myself and my day and my career and my life. I'm not locked into things, and I'm grateful for that because choice is freedom. Agency is control of my own destiny. Okay. Now, the problem we get stuck with this part here is that we always think about happiness just being just ahead, right? Well, I'd be happy if I could change my circumstances, I'd be happier. If I could make more money, I'd be happier. If I could change my job, I'd be happier. If I got a raise, I'd be happier. If I got promoted, I'd be happier. If I got married, I'd be happier. All those sort of things, right? And sometimes we attach that to money. And what we know from the science is that we adapt to the good things in life. And this one is just really interesting when we're chasing things. It's really such a cool quote that came from Pliny the Younger that talks about, money is that the object that we possess seldom retains the same charm it had in the pursuit of that thing. And so enjoy it. And even Jim Carrey said this is like, you can aim for the mountaintop, but enjoy the journey to that mountaintop because it's really important. And so, we adjust to these things, right? Like the other day, or a few months ago, I was like, I travel a lot and I had some old boxy headphones, and they were good headphones, but they were starting to fall apart. So I invested in, some of these iPods, and they're great. I love them. They work really well. They have great sound. They have noise canceling. They're perfect for planes. And if I don't remember and be like, oh yeah, this thing is a really nice thing in my life, I'm really glad I had the $200 to invest in my life, to buy these things and appreciate this upgrade to my life. Okay, we adapt to those things quickly. Now we did 50 and 10, so that means we're coming to the final part here, and that's 40%. And that means that of this glass, between genetics being 50% and circumstances being about 10%, again, rule of thumb, that we have 40% that's all you. And what I mean by all you is it's the choices you make, it's the habits you have in your life, and it's the mindset that you approach life. And all of those are full of agency and choice and malleability. Okay. So we're going to play with that today because we're going to play with purpose. I'm going to say, hey, listen, you have choices to make about like, what do you know about yourself? And what are you going to do with it? What are the habits that you choose to make from that? Now, if we talk about the overarching model of happiness and how do we enhance this 40%, There's really good tools on this. The science of positive psychology, which is the science of human happiness, has been around since the late 1990s. And there's these awesome tools that exist for helping us understand how to be happier in life. Okay. And what's really cool about this is that we know where people live in the world, and we know how happy they are. We know what they do with their lives. We know what they do with their, are they educated? How much money do they make? What are they doing with their, do they have good quality relationships? All of those things. And so I like to travel to happy places in the world. Now, if I were to tell you that I went to the second happiest place in the entire world, the second happiest country in the entire world, anytime I ask this question with audiences, no one says United States of America, which is interesting. And out of the 100 and some countries in the World Happiness Report, US is usually like between 18 and 23 overall, which is not bad, but not perfect, right? So I went to the second happiest country in the world a couple of years ago. Where did I go? It's a pretty revealing photo, I think, from the colors. Most of you know something about happiness around the world. All right, Vanessa says Norway. Kathy says Denmark. Okay, Ellie says Netherlands. Hi, Nancy. Nancy says Amsterdam. Okay, we've got the correct answer in here. Correct answer is Denmark. I went there for a 3-week vacation. I spent 2 weeks there and spent a week in Scotland. And it was really interesting. While I was in Denmark, second happiest country in the entire world, according to the World Happiness Report. Finland is number one. And a lot of those Nordic countries are in there. Netherlands is up there. So most of you are on top. Norway, Finland, they're all in there. This is not a political discourse, but they're very socialized countries. They take care of their people's basic needs. And I think that alleviates a lot of the fears. They don't have medical bankruptcy. They have really good unemployment. So if you have to lose your job, or if you have a bad fit with a job, you can leave. They have good retirement systems. They have very high taxes, right? But it's interesting to go there. And while we were there, we went to this World Happiness Museum, which was really cool. It's a World Happiness Museum. They do studies mostly centered in Europe about human happiness. And while we were there, my girlfriend and I were at the museum, and they were doing a coronation, a ceremony that day of self-nominated people from around Denmark, the happiest couple, the happiest people in all of Denmark. And we were supposed to do something else and leave. We were doing a bike trip through the country. And we kind of rearranged our schedule, had a late lunch, and came back for the ceremony so we could meet this couple. So think about this. I'm a human happiness expert. I love human happiness. And I got the chance to meet the the happiest couple in all of Denmark as nominated by their peers. And when I met them, it was disappointing, right? When I think about Denmark, or when I think about happiness, we think about elation and joy, right? And, we think about Buddy the Elf, and it's like, oh my gosh, but Danish people are subdued. But what's interesting about Danish people, and what's interesting about even the word happiness, is that maybe we need to flip the word and use a different word. Are you content? Are you satisfied? Do you have pride? Do you have purpose? Do you have pleasure? Do you have all of these things in your life? So let's explore those really quickly. Now, I'm going to ask you to jump into the chat. We're only going to talk about 2 of these today, and we'll just talk about friendships very quickly. There's 5 elements to human happiness. Purpose is embedded in one of those. And again, these should come from work. So let's do this. I want you to get your fingers ready in the chat. Sorry about the coughing. But you should have positive relationships in your life. The science is very clear about this. So I'm going to stop and say that again. The science is very, very clear about this. The people that live the happiest lives have great friendships. They have warm, supportive, reciprocal, authentic, vulnerable relationships. The number of relationships for introverts, 3 people is fine. If you're an extrovert, you probably need a few more. I'm more extroverted. I'm not trying to become more introverted. And what's really interesting is that, those relationships really matter. Now, they matter to how happy you are, and it matters at work as well. Okay. Now, we're going to use a very fancy digital voting tool here in a moment. And by digital voting, I mean this. I mean, we're going to use your digits. Okay. We're going to use your 5 fingers. You can vote 0 for low, 5 for high, 2, 3, or 4. If you're voting 1, use the appropriate finger for a workplace webinar. Okay. But this one's really interesting. This simple question. If you answer this question strongly, you are 7 times more likely to be engaged in the work that you do. Being engaged in the work that you do is good for you. Having your employees engaged in the work they do versus just mailing it in is really good for them as well. And we're going to talk about how purpose plays in with that today as well. All right, so answer this question for me on a scale of 0 to 5. You choose any number you want. Now, I'm going to qualify this before you type. It doesn't have to be your best friend in the entire world. It doesn't have to be somebody you spend weekends with, go to every happy hour with. Just someone, I was like, hey, is there someone, if they were gone tomorrow, they transferred, if they passed away, if something happened to them, you'd be like, oh, that was my person at work. What can you say? Can you say, I have a best friend at work? Now, I work alone, so I have best friends outside of work. Okay, thank you, Kathy. Some candor there. Kathy, that's something I would love, for you to think about how to work on, because it is so incredibly important to feel like you belong, that you're connected. Appreciated. Okay, Wendy says 3. Natalie says 5. Great, Natalie. Kelly says 5. Awesome. Vanessa Fuchs is what the name says in the chat, but she's the chief of the Sonoma. So I feel like I have to say chief all the time. I'm going to say chief. Chief Fuchs says 4. Okay, good. Awesome. Cool. These are solid numbers, but, Kathy, that's one worthy of exploring. And I'd love to understand more on that one. It's investing in those relationships, Matt. Okay. Again, 7 times more likely to have those people engaged just by having someone that they like showing up and seeing at work. Okay. All right. The other part of this is this is the second part of the human happiness model. Again, there's 5 parts of it in that model. Is about fulfillment. It's about purpose, and it's what we're here to talk about more specifically today. And so it's about having meaning and being other focused and service focused. And it's not about you. It's about what can you do for the world. Now, I'm going to tell you that it's not about you. It's about what you can do for the world, but it can be about you. There's a healthy level of narcissism in here, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay. And one of my favorite people in the world, this is a great book, Dr. Robert Waldinger, that's how he says his name, I promise, says this. So it's, this is the Greek that I was talking about, is that, Aristotle talked about eudaimonia. This is the opposite of hedonism. It's about having purpose in your life. And it's about the ups and downs of day-to-day life being, part of life, but it's something more than that. It's about having purpose and about understanding what you do and what you provide to the people around you or the world. Okay. And Kathy, I'm looking at your chat. Sorry. Okay. Thank you for explaining your 0 score. Sorry for the digression to everyone else. So it's more than that. And so let's break that down a little bit for you. On the y-axis, if some of you are doing algebra at home, is with your kids, right? If you're teaching algebra at home with your kids, it probably means you're also relearning algebra since it's been 30 years since I took it. But that's what we think about with happiness, right? Y-axis is joy. That's called hedonism or hedonia. And the x-axis, that horizontal one, is called purpose. That's eudaimonia. That's 2 Greek words that describe happiness. Now, if you don't have any of those, it's the void life. That's, it's not really a whole lot going on. And then if we add in some of these things that, we think about as pleasure, joy, fun, like having barbecues with friends, going to vacation in Las Vegas. I don't go to Vegas, but for vacation, but others do. Going to comedy shows, laughing with your friends, that's what we think about as happiness. And that by itself, that's the sweet life. That's good stuff, right? That's stuff that we should have in our life for sure. And we should craft more of those things, and we should build those things in our lives. But that's not all of it. And so how do we add in more of understanding that degrees and certifications and advancement and promotions are good things, right? Richard Leiter, who is really big researcher in purpose, is to think about how we can grow more. How do we grow our expertise so that we can give more? How can we have more impact? And anytime I'm talking to someone about promotion, I want to know that they're connected to serving and leading better and leading more and having more influence and not just chasing the money, because more money for supervising people, that's a big change in the work that you do, right? I know a lot of people that work inside institutions. That's the term for what we call juvenile halls, I think, colloquially. And a juvenile hall is where kids, are in probation and, they're supervised there. And some of those people stay there for their entire career. They don't ever want to promote up or out of that because they want to work with the kids. That's awesome. Right? I love that. And purpose is also about volunteering. Now, serving other people, being service oriented. Now, there's a mix here, and because if all you have are those things, that's the dry life. It's missing a lot. So, how do you add in the burgers and the vacations and the fun and the laughter to have this fulfilled life? And fulfilled life has purpose and it has joy. And it's an algorithm for you. And I will tell you two things about this algorithm. An algorithm is a formula. First part of the formula uh, is that it's a formula for you. Okay. Don't get lost thinking that what makes other people happy will make you happy if you don't think it will. Okay. I love stand-up comedy. I perform stand-up comedy. I perform improv. I MC events. I love standing on stages at conferences. Some people, that's their worst nightmare. They wouldn't sleep for 3 days before having to present at a conference, right? Or even present in front of 15 people, right? So don't try to pattern your life around what you think will make you happy because it's what other people are doing. Like, get to know yourself and what really makes you happy, okay? And also allow for this formula to change over time. What fulfilled you when you were 20 and when you were 40 and when you're 60. My mom is now in her 70s. I'll say early 70s to protect her age. But she loves being a grandma. And that's not something that she, I think as a 20-year-old was thinking like doing puzzles with my grandkids would be fulfilling. It's incredibly fulfilling now, but maybe not for the 20-year-old version of her. Okay. So let's keep playing with purpose. And I'm going to frame up purpose a little bit more specifically around workplaces. Okay. And there's two parts to purpose. And I said two parts. This is the most famous part, I think, in all of TV. That's Mr. Dwight Schrute from The Office. Your purpose, like, are you connected to your own purpose? And then do you have a purpose-driven culture? And we're going to play with that. We're talking about culture and purpose-driven people collectively, because all of you are here, I think, that are employed, right? So first one, here's why it matters, okay? Purpose-driven people live 7 years longer. Well, that's worth paying attention to, right? Connected people live longer. People with strong relationships live longer as well, okay? You have less burnout, you manage stress better, and you get promoted, right? People that are into the mission of what they're doing and into serving other people are the people that you want leading teams. Okay? Second part is cultures with purpose, okay? What's interesting about cultures with purpose and people in those cultures with purpose is they give more discretionary effort. They work harder than they have to, okay? We'll talk about that in a moment. You have better retention, okay? Some people are going to leave anyway. Now, a lot of you here are in the public sector and in government. There's a lot less retention challenges than like in tech, where people bounce around between jobs every 18 months or 2 years, right? But if you have somebody that's really good, how do you keep them for as long as you can? They may be upwardly mobile, they may be wanting to do something else, but how do you keep somebody that's really good and you can keep them for 3 years instead of 2? You get an extra year out of them when they're really humming and like really have hit their stride. That's worth it, right? And crazy stuff like people use less sick days, because there's a lot of times when you're like, yeah, I know you're pretending to be sick, but I know you're not sick. And they show up because they care about their work and they care about the people they work with, and they're fulfilled by it, so that they will push through those thresholds. Okay. And I love this quote, that this comes from Bob Nelson. He talks about getting the best effort from people is by lighting a fire beneath them. It's not about lighting it beneath them. That's extrinsic motivation. It's about lighting a fire within them so that they're fired up, right? And if we take this fire metaphor and play with it a little bit, if we have low performing people and high performing people, and we have a bar at the bottom and we have a bar at the top for low and high performers, the people at the top, they're people that have a calling, right? Like what they're doing at work is a calling. They have been called forth to do it. It doesn't mean religiously, it can mean, right? But this is something they're like, no, this is what I'm doing with my world. This matters to me so much. Think about those people working with youth inside of juvenile hall. They're like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I am here to save children's lives, right? And the people, that's high performers. Now, the people below this line, and sorry, let me say this differently. That's the high performers. The people in the middle, kind of where that flame symbol is, that's, your decent performing people that are doing pretty well. How do you fire them up? How do you get them to sustain? And how do you get them to see themselves, and have their own power and their own strengths and be recognized for what they're doing? And then there's a bar at the bottom, right? And that bar at the bottom, if they're not hitting that, that's the minimum performance standard. If they're below that, they get performance plans, right? And if you're writing performance plans because someone needs to improve their work, you are stealing time from the other valuable work you could be doing. And so it's, it's the time saver, having you people fired up. Now, this conversation, having people with where are you? What do you want to be doing with your career? Is this a job? Is this a career? Is this a calling? That requires trust, because they have to be vulnerable with you, and vulnerability is potentially risky. Okay. But having that level of conversation with them is really important, right? Somebody might come to you and say, listen, I have this job. I'm an intern. I was an intern first. I'm in this entry level position with you. I'm probably going to leave in 2 years once I get my teaching degree. Okay. Thanks for being honest with me. We are going to help show you yourself in the next 2 years so that you walk away from this experience learning so much about yourself and gaining valuable skills and expertise that maybe they don't even want to leave after those 2 years, or they realize the teaching is really hard. I did it for 3 years. Notice I said 3 years. I taught for 3 years. I got tenure, and then I quit because I was like, this is really hard for the money, right? So these are big conversations to have with your people. Now, this is the heart side of managing people and leading people. There's a hammer side, and the hammer side is accountability, and that's below that line of performance plan. Like, you have to hold your people accountable, because it's demoralizing for everyone else when you have low performers and everyone sees it and you're not holding them accountable. And accountability can also be supportive too, of like, hey, all right, you need technical skills to do your job better, no problem. Okay. So let's talk about your work. Since there's people on here from law enforcement, I have a little funny around that, but I want you to think about your work purpose. And there's 2 parts here that you can control, and that's what I want you to work on. First part, if we go back in your earlier career, when you were a young professional, I'm so proud of myself with this little image. You had dreams and aspirations, and you wanted to help change the world and change, and maybe probation, or you wanted to help improve your community, providing transit services, whatever the thing is for you. And then you get, maybe a little jaded by when you see how hard these things are, and bureaucratic processes and all that. So let's ask a couple questions about work and how purpose feels for you. We're going to use our voting system again. And how would you respond to this on a scale of 0 to 5? To what extent do you feel that the quality of your work meaningfully contributes and influences to the overall success and functioning of your organization? What you got on this one? All right, when it says 5. Kathy says 4, great. Allie says 5, Kelly, good, 4, 5, good, 4, 4, 4, okay. Did I spell achievement wrong? I think I did. Okay. All right. Yeah. Good. All right. These are good. 4s and 5s, great. 3s are like right in the middle of the road. 5. And, that's achievement, right? So if I'm doing a good job, it matters to the organization, and I understand how my role plays into the functioning of the organization. The word mattering is really important. Do you matter at work? All right. Second part, recognition. To what extent do you feel publicly recognized and praised by coworkers for the quality of work? 0 to 5 again. Okay, Wendy says 5. When do you have the fastest fingers today? You're doing great. Okay, we got some 3s in here. All right. Recognition is really important. I see 2s and 4s coming in. Thank you for your candor. Recognition is really important. Recognition requires trust, because you have to have conversations with people about how much recognition they want, how much they don't. Now, for me, I love recognition. Okay. I have a hard time receiving it sometimes in the moment. It feels a little bit awkward, but I do like being honored and recognized. It's part of my leadership style too, of like wanting to connect people. I'll give you an example. So I do a lot of work for the Boys and Girls Club here in Bend. I'm on the board. I've been on the board here before. It's my favorite mission in the whole wide world. And I was at Bethlehem Inn, which is a high barrier shelter here where people can live either individually in bunks or in family units. And I was serving food on a Friday. And that's me also virtue signaling. I was volunteering one time, and I was paying attention to the people that I was there. It was really good for me to go do that in the midst of me having a really great year financially, a really purposeful year, a big year of travel. Like, it was just a really wonderful year for me. And it was a really nice time for me to give back and recognize that other people have it really hard. And I noticed that there were kids there behind me that were with their families in another room. They separate families in one room and individuals on the other side. And because I'm on the Boys and Girls Club, I got the name of the executive director for the shelter. I knew the executive director for Boys and Girls Club. I connected them and said, CEO, Boys and Girls Club, there are kids in that facility, and I think they need our mission. They need our services. They need our programs. They need our positive relationships. Can you see what we can do about that? And they gratefully, we are waiving our fees for those families and those kids, because they're the kids we need to be serving the most, right? In my eyes. And he wrote a follow-up email to the board and just said, hey, I just want to let you know about this great new partnership. We're making sure these families get served. But nowhere in that email did he say anything about me connecting the dots to the mission and making that happen. Now, very selfish, very ego-driven. I'm over it now. But there was a small moment of recognition that could have happened in there that would have continued to light the fire under me in that moment. Okay, I'm still on fire. I still love the mission. I'm going to a meeting right after this to be part of our fundraising strategy for the fund year. Okay, so those little moments of recognition matter. Those little moments of recognizing excellence matter, and they play into trust. And that's a free tool I'm going to give you for later today. All right, so let's talk about our purpose model in a more active way that gets you to explore what you could be doing differently. We're thinking about habits here and making some small changes. Now, this word ikigai in the center of that is a Japanese term, and there's a book called Ikigai. And ikigai is what's called a reason for being. It's your reason for living. It's your reason for waking up each day and getting out of bed. In the Costa Rican culture has a different term. It's called plan de vida, right? That's the plan for life, right? What are you doing with yourself? Why are you doing what you do? Now, this Ikigai model is broken into 4 quadrants, and that's what we're going to play with together today. The first quadrant is, what's your gifts? Okay, what are you good at? We'll explore that with a little tool. What do you love? Service meaning drivers. We'll do that here in a second. What's the world need? Now, we're not going to spend time on that part today, but what's the world need? More love, more connection, more better relationships, more less barriers, less us than them, more support for communities and disadvantaged populations. It's whatever is a value for you. Okay. And then quadrant 4 is, what can you get paid for? Now, you notice that the word volunteerism is written in there, but I want you to think about, for those of you that have public sector jobs, it's probably hard for you if you're, far along in your career, to think about changing your entire career at this point. Now, I made that change. I left the work I was doing in nonprofits to come over and do this work of speaking and facilitation over the last decade plus now. But I've shaped my life and my work in a way that's really fulfilling for me. So let's use this as an example so you can see what it would look like in reality. Okay. First one is, what are you good at? All right. Well, I'm good at eating hot dogs. I like hot dogs. Okay. Oscar my wiener. All right. What do you love? I love getting people together. I love getting people to connect. I love having food. I like making food for people, right? I'm good at grilling hot dogs, right? That's my love language. Okay. What's the world need? Well, we need more connection. We need to get together. We need to hang out more. We need to be, have more positivity in our lives. And so here's the hard part. I was like, well, how do I turn this into a job? Well, you can't get paid for eating hot dogs. Or can you? Oh my gosh, there's a Nathan's hot dog eating contest. Hopefully I'm getting some LOLs on this one. But and he looks pretty miserable there. I think that's the National Hot Dog Eating Championship. He's got this look of, what have I done, on his face. Okay. So let's play with this in small parts for you. Okay. And we have a limited amount of time to do this today. Thank you for the LOL. And so let's play with each of these, just a little bit. Okay. First one is service meaning drivers. Okay. So this is like, what kind of service do you like? It's really about love language. And so, some love language is like checking in on people. Did you eat? Is your brain being nice to you? How are you feeling? You sleeping well? You taking care of yourself? Okay, good. This is my girlfriend's love language right here. Here's 100 memes and gifts I love to send you, right? Just all day long. And silliness and funny little things that she's pushing me on Instagram. My sister's like that too, right? Now, what I want you to do in this next one, and you can just type the number in the chat if you'd like. I want you to read these statements, and I want you to determine which one of these is just easy for you to do. What's an easy type of service that provides meaning in life for you? Okay. I'm going to say number 4. Oh, I'm not typing in the chat. I just changed the screen. Sorry about that. Number 4, acts of service acts. Okay. This is the easiest one for me, right? Y'all got. Okay, got some mixes here. Yeah. So Chief Fuchs says 6, inspiration. Yeah, great, cool. All right. By the way, none of these are better than the others. They're all just great. Right? Just getting to know yourself. Fluency, right? That word we used. Kathy says 5, integrated values. Okay. Yeah, cool. That was pretty strong for me too, Kathy. Yeah. Kelly says 3, shared purpose. Okay, cool, great, awesome. Nancy says 3, 3, 3. Okay, a lot of threes in here. That's interesting. Yeah, and there's usually a pretty good mix on this one. So these can be activated again. This is a craft, right? Like, how do you spend time in the case of Chief Fuchs and saying, all right, inspiration, like I have an inspiration for our vision. And the Chief is the highest ranking person in that department. For those of you that don't know, how do I share that vision? How do I share that inspiration around the vision, mission, leadership, successes that we've had for people? Probation, in my eyes, is two circles that overlap. It's protecting community safety and also rehabilitating people, right? How do you live in those two worlds of recognizing people have made mistakes, give them new skills, new pathways forward, of being in the community in a way that's safe for the community as well, right? So those are all great. So that's the way that it's easy for you to do. And remember, choose your own adventure. The brain loves choice. Choose the thing that's easy for you, also the thing that's energizing for you. Okay. And that's the whole point, is that give you some fluency, some awareness. Now, well, what's the habit that you can start playing with? And if you were to start engaging with this a little more concretely, I will tell you that most of the time when we do this workshop, it's 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, it can be a full day with teams. And we have more time to dive into these more specifically. We create habit statements or purpose statements. We're skipping over those a little bit today. But now you have this service meaning driver, like, okay, inspiration is my thing. Okay, yeah, connection and shared purpose is my thing. Okay, for me, acts of service, easy to do. Okay. So then what do you need to do to get more out of that type of meaning or service? Okay. Now let's jump into our second part of this, which is your top gift. And to do that, I'm going to give you a PDF. And this PDF is today, you can just kind of scan it and just pick one in here. And then I can give you this via email afterwards if you would like it. It should be in the chat now, a quick PDF. And it's about different types of gifts. Okay. So I want you to spend a minute or two with that PDF and just scan through and just see which something jumps out for you. Okay. As things that you are good at. That's what this is about. These are your gifts. And then how would you put those gifts into action more frequently? And how can you tie it back in with that service driver that we just talked about? Okay. So give that a second. Give it a view. I'm going to drop a couple in the chat. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Chief. Mhm. Money, like those. Now, what I did in the chat is I put together my acts of service, which is my service meaning driver. Okay, I like doing acts of service. That's the easiest thing for me to do. And I added together bringing joy, which was one of my gifts, right? And I said that's comedy, for me. And I'll give you another example in a moment of how I've shaped my life to say, okay, these are the things I like to do, and the world needs them. Well, how can I do more of them so that I'm fulfilled in the world by doing things? And then how do I connect that back to um, my own service? Like if I were to give you my purpose statement in life, I will tell you, I want to bring joy and fulfillment to the people that I get to interact with in the world, while also experiencing joy and fulfillment in my own life. So see how that had some healthy narcissism in there? Yes, there is something, so there is a term, healthy narcissist. Okay. All right, good. So now what do we do with this is the important question. So how do you put these gifts into action? Okay. And what does that look like for you? Okay. So I put them into action, and I do stand-up comedy, other things, right? And there's different ways to play with this. Okay. Job crafting is one of the terms. And what that means is, how do you shape the existing work that you do, or if you're going to stay with your employer? Let's honor the fact that some of you are like mid-career professionals, late career professionals. You're not like fresh out of college and saying, oh, this isn't the work for me, I'm going to try something else, right? You're like, no, I'm in this work. How can I craft my job to lean into more of these service meaning drivers and these gifts that I have? Okay. And that's shaping your job, finding a new job, changing roles, changing a job description if you can, and saying, oh, these are the things that I'm really good at. How do I just do more of these? Now, I'm not saying any job out there is a perfect job. I'm not saying any job out there gives you 100% autonomy. That's just not the way the world works for most of us, right? But how could you just make small tweaks and changes to do more of what you're good at as much as possible, right? Isn't that kind of a freeing statement? Just as much as possible, okay? As is possible at work. And for that may mean 2% more. It may mean, I don't know, 70% more, right? That's something you have to explore. The second thing that's in here is volunteerism. Okay. Now, this green thing in the bottom of the Venn diagram here says, what can you be paid for? So part of that is like, well, what's the world going to pay you for, right? And so that can mean, well, also, what if I had like a side job or a side hustle? I love making crafts. All right, well, then make crafts and do that as a side gig. Cool, great. Or if we're talking about workplace purpose today, but if we were to step away from work and say, well, you have a family life and you have a community life, what could you be doing there? And what are the types of volunteerism that would be fulfilling for you and purposeful for you, and also something the world needs? You won't get paid for it, but it's going to add to your life. I gave you an example before. I'll give you an example again. This past weekend, last few years, I've just been emceeing events that tell silly jokes, but it matters to me. It's an act of service. It's easy for me to go out and hold microphones. I like microphones. I like being silly. I like bringing joy to others, and I like connecting others. I want people to want to come to that holiday parade every year because I know it's good for them. It's good for people to get off the couch. It's good for people to interact with strangers. It's good for people to laugh. It's good for people to feel connected to their community. So it's real easy for me to do those things. I am fulfilled, and I find joy in those moments while giving joy and fulfillment to other people. Okay. That's my algorithm. That's for me. Okay. Here's the deal. With everything that we learned today, you have homework. Okay. And I don't want you to make that face. I'm talking about happiness homework. I'm talking about purpose homework. I'm talking about you being more fulfilled in this world. And so don't make that face. Don't make this face either. Okay. I'm going to put a QR code up here in a moment. I'm going to take it down for a second, but I'll put it back up for you. But I want you to stay connected to this work. Okay. If you would like these, I'll drop my email in the chat here, but if you would like these PDFs today, I'm happy to share those with you. If you want to grab a copy of my book, they are on Amazon.com. It's called The Little Book of Workplace Happiness. If you scan this today, you have the option to get on my email list, so that when we do more webinars like this, you can stay connected to those. And I'm going to give you something on trust. This is one of my favorite things to talk about with teams, is building those cohesive relationships, those trusting relationships. By the way, they feel really good. Our brains are wired to want trust. Okay. You'll get that for free as a PDF. If you know of trade associations, if you know of conferences, if you know of workplaces that could use the support, if it's your workplace, we should talk. I would love to do that work inside your workplace. Okay. And something else that's coming up, and another reason to get on my email list, is because we do these webinars on a regular basis. They are typically free. I am doing some paid ones because a lot of these professionals in the public sector have continuing education units or credits that they need to get. So I'm doing one in January. That's a 3-hour paid program. It'll be more interactive than this. We'd spend more time with activities. We'll play some games. They're silly and fun. I do 3-hour programs all the time. So again, all you have to do is give me some feedback on that. And I'm wrapping up the show. It's 11:59. Look at the timing there. Almost as good as my comedic timing. But that's today's program. If you have questions, I'm sticking around. I can answer questions that you put in the chat.